Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pilot episode of A Little Bit of SaaS. This is the podcast you're going to want to listen to if you want to stay on the front line of all the tech trends with everything to do with AI, data, and everything your business might need to operate in our rapidly changing tech landscape that we now live in. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Solentive. Solentive are a strategy-first tech consultancy that focus on software automation and AI. Today we have one of our very special own talents that I get to present to you today, and his name is Armaan Nawaz, who is our CRM D365 and Copilot specialist. The topic of the discussion that you're about to listen to is everything to do with modern workplace and productivity. Now, the two main things that Armaan and I talk about are Microsoft D365 CRM and Microsoft Copilot. Now, both of these are very powerful tools, and Armaan is going to bring in his expertise on what you might want to consider before adopting AI into something so powerful like your entire Microsoft suite and how you want to amplify what you can get out of those products. I know you're going to want to listen to the very end because there are so many key takeaways from this pilot episode of A Little Bit of SaaS. Now, I won't take any more spoilers from you, and I'll let us get straight into the episode. Why don't we start off very simply, Armaan, by talking about what is CRM? Like, what does it stand for? What does it mean? If I'm a business owner, why would I even want to have some sort of system that manages CRM?
Yeah, CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, and its place in your business is able to have a holistic view of your customer, have one place that you can see all of your interactions with them as well, right? So this goes from sales pipeline. You can see that different salespeople are communicating with a customer. Then also from a support perspective, you'll have visibility on what cases are being logged by the customer, how their experience is. And, it also comes into context that, if you're in different teams, you have a full picture of your customer to see how their relationship is with you. That way, if you're talking to them and trying to sell them or cross-sell, upsell, you have the full perspective and the likelihood that they will want to proceed based on their previous experience with you.
Okay, so simply put, it's a system that manages all the contents and details of your customers, everything from prospects, leads, marketing, ventures, all those things, so your team can collaborate together effectively and efficiently, but then it also seems to be quite efficient in terms of optimizing and opening up opportunities to further sell and cross-sell and all that. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. I think that's pretty basic. I think most people will understand that, but given that we're going to talk about CRM D365 today and how that works with things like Copilot, it's probably important to touch off the basics.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's a good start to us. So I'm conscious that there are many types of CRMs out there. Many different companies are doing it. There's some big ones out there. There's some smaller ones. Mm-hmm. Us at Solentive, we're a Microsoft partner, so we emphasize using M365 and specifically D365 within that. Could you talk a little bit about what D365 CRM is specifically and how that's sort of different and what that means for a customer?
Yeah, I think D365 is a suite of business applications, which does go from, finance, project, HR, but then you also got your CRM side, which is more sales, customer service, contact center, marketing, which is customer insights. On the CRM side, I think the pure advantage is because it's Microsoft, you have native integration with all Microsoft products. So, like your Outlook natively integrates directly into CRM. You've got Teams where you're able to collaborate, be able to make phone calls to clients, which then can get logged in CRM automatically. And then even SharePoint, right? Being able to store all your documents that you're sharing with your clients or, even collaborating with your clients directly through CRM. So definitely has that advantage over other CRMs, which probably need a third-party integrator, or even if they do develop it, they tend to make it feature light instead of saying feature heavy, feature light, where they sort of hold back the capabilities of the integration because they've got a product that probably does something fairly similar and they want you to unlock that benefit with their application. So they're trying to highlight what their benefit is. So they'll make quite light on the features just to get base integration. So, you're cool. Like, for example, if you're using a different phone application outside of Teams, you have phone integration, cool, but you only can do this in the application, right? You're not able to automatically track calls. You have to manually plug it in and link it to what you want to do. Yeah.
Right. So I guess it sounds like Microsoft and D365 kind of makes the whole process of your business from a holistic perspective kind of integrate more seamlessly rather than, and I've seen this with some of the clients that we work with through like a discovery phase, right? We sit there and we go, okay, well, what IT tools are you using? And then by the time we've sat with them for an hour and a half and looked at all the different ways they use their tools for their business operations, it's like, you've got 6 different, companies that you've got these different things with, and then it gets really complicated. And I imagine
puzzle pieces, right?
Yeah. And I think from what I've experienced, with using D365, it's that it is very smooth. Teams integrates within SharePoint, and you can make phone calls here that track over there, and you can send an Outlook email that gets automatically tracked into CRM and D365, and it's just really seamless, I think, is the best word to use, right? Effortless, yeah, there you go. So then I guess, on that topic, could you go a little bit deeper into the features or benefits as to why someone would want to move onto M365, D365?
Yeah, look, I think, again, stating the obvious, it's if you're on the Microsoft stack, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer because, you do get that native integration, right? You don't have to worry too much about, I'm using this email client, I need to integrate it with this, with the CRM, or is it even possible to integrate it, right? Or do you have to go through development pipelines to try and build something to meet your business needs, right? Whereas D365, if you take that out of it, right, let's just look at Dynamics directly, it's highly customizable to fit your needs, right? You can tailor screens, you can tailor flows, you can create automations through Power Automate to be able to get it to trigger things automatically and get it to do what you need it to do, right? So, so it works for your business. It's not just like, okay, cool, you get something out of the box, you're stuck with that, and you have to tailor your business processes to the application. It's tailoring the application to your business process.
I wonder if this is where they got the name D365, like Dynamics, right? Because it is dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're saying from what I hear, and my experience with it is dynamic. And I've seen some of the great work that you do within our company as our CRM specialist, right? Like there's many features that you can use within it, but not every business is going to need all of those features, or maybe some of them are more key than others. So when you're configuring your systems for like what you might use daily that are relevant to you, you can customize that, right? So it's very it's like bendable, and you can mesh it into a way that works for the best way that it's going to work within your operations and your business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a point to mention is like different industries work differently, right? So they don't all, like out of the box, Dynamics kind of follows this flow in sales specifically, right? Of generate a lead, comes opportunity, you quote them, you produce an invoice, and you're done, right? But not all sales processes are like that. Sometimes it's just a relationship and an agreement gets made, right? Where you're not actually selling something directly, but you're making that agreement. And you see that maybe in the insurance industry, right? Where they're not quite using the full-fledged functionality, but they're using parts of it which is quite core to their business.
Right. Yeah, look, I mean, there's so many different use cases that it can really excel in, right? And that was not a pun on a Microsoft product, by the way. That just came up out of nowhere. And I think some other things that I've seen you do for us, which is quite impressive, is looking at the marketing insights and the customer journeys and, setting up everything from, okay, we're going to run an event, and once people start coming through and signing up for it, then the details get sort of automated through a process, and then everything is integrated from the kind of the customer journey for us with tracking everything, so that all our team members can log on and see the journey that the customer's been on essentially as well, and gather all that data. And don't even get me started on what Copilot can do with that, because we'll talk about that after. But there's things like that really make it stand out from what I've seen. Is there anything else that comes up for you that might be relevant for people listening?
I think now in the landscape, there's been recent changes with customer service, and they've sort of Microsoft split customer service with omnichannel, which now has become contact center, and its capability and how it integrates with AI and Copilot is quite unique. And I think that's definitely like, look, they sell that product as you don't need to be on Dynamics specifically. You can link that to other CRMs. As long as you've got a CRM, you link it in, and it's able to handle a lot of the automation to make customer service a lot easier in general, right? Where it's using AI to give recommendations, suggestions, even do its, if you want to call it, level 1 diagnostics, right? To help the customer before it gets given to an agent, helps deal with that, and then connect you to an agent that's appropriate, right? And I think that's something that's quite unique, and I haven't seen, and I might be wrong, but I haven't seen personally a product that does something like quite as impressive as that.
Wow.
When it comes to AI.
Yeah. So there's a way of customizing an agent, which essentially you mean a Copilot agent, right? So it's a way of customizing an automation on we call them like an intern, right? Like, so automating a specific intern to do a specific job, and you tell it exactly what it's going to do, right? So getting that agent to successfully be set up is all on you, right? Because you're the one configuring it. But then you can have it do a really specific job, like, it can be a triage on the front end of a website, right? Like, and then that way you can fast track certain parts of a customer's journey, or vice versa, where maybe you have the bit of contact with them first, then you go using a Copilot agent for other aspects.
Yeah,
right?
I'll kind of correct you there.
Yeah, please do.
I think you went into Copilot agents, which is not quite the same thing. So
I think this is a big question that comes up for a lot of people. So I'm glad you're catching me on that.
in contact center specifically, it's more that, yes, you can have like an agent that sits on your website, right, which people talk to, a chatbot, right, and basically give it the information, and it starts trying to help you with the case automatically. It's not that you're programming it, but it sees the context of your problem, and it looks up knowledge articles within your system to then recommend a solution, right? And if it's something that's outside of its bounds, which is kind of what you were mentioning, it knows that, okay, look, that needs to be escalated to a human. So cool, let's pass it over to a human. They'll help you, if it's something maybe like an invoicing query, right? Then it needs to go to a human to help interact with the person, right? So then you get handed off to a human. The human comes on board and then can see the full history of what Copilot's actually talked to the customer about, and then you can take it from there, and then giving it suggestions along the way about like quick responses, and to make it a lot easier for the agent, because sometimes you do have to write a lot of information and you have to type it every single time, right? So giving you those quick responses that you can, even if it's as simple as a greeting, right, saves you typing for 20 seconds.
Yeah. So everything at the moment from probably the entire tech industry is all about automation and making things effortless and automating. That's a better word. We'll go with that one.
Automizing. I like that.
Automizing. I like to create my own words on podcasts. Yeah, that's where our brains go. Let's just create new languages. Speaking of languages, I feel like there's a whole discussion you can go down when it comes to looking at AI and Gen AI and how the large language model has an effect on that. But we're not going to go into that today, because we will get lost for an hour on that discussion.
And I think people get really excited, especially Pete.
Yes, we've got some very enthusiastic techies in our company. But we love it. It's how we stay on the front line, isn't it, Armaan?
Yes.
So I guess on this, now that we're starting to talk a little bit about things like Copilot and whatnot, what I've noticed going out and meeting people at networking events and people in the industry and companies looking to innovate their ways of working and digital transformation, everyone's asking about security, So I guess, like, without going too deep into it, can you give us a bit of a basic level of the security measures around something like D365 CRM and something like Copilot? Like, how can my organization and business feel like we're safe with our content around something so powerful?
Okay, so I think there's a few different levels here, right? So you've got your role-based access, right? So first you have to be assigned a license. If you don't have a license, you don't have access to Dynamics.
Okay, so a license for Dynamics.
Yeah, so you can't get in the first place, so you wouldn't have access to the information, right?
Just before you go on, again, I'm conscious of the people listening, and some people might not even know the difference between, okay, I've got Outlook and I've got SharePoint, I've got this, but just quickly, again, can you remind us what the difference is there? between like all the normal Office suites and D365? Like, what does it mean? Like, just because I feel like sometimes people do get a bit lost in that too. Like,
yeah, the different sets of applications, right? So Outlook and Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they're kind of your productivity applications, right? It's probably not the right word, but you use those applications to come up with documents, presentations, interacting with your clients via email. Teams is more chat and collaboration, right? Whereas Dynamics is more like your central storage for all of your interactions with your customers.
okay, cool. I'm going to hold you there because otherwise we could go too deep. I just wanted the basic thing just to clarify. So we've got a whole bunch of tools that people use, but then we've got the D365, which is like a central hub where it all connects with and then tracks everything. Cool. All right. Back to your security.
Yeah, so first you have a license for Dynamics, which, that's based on application, right? So if you've got a Dynamic sales license, right, that gets assigned to a user, that gives them access to Dynamics. You also got a team member license, which gives you a limited view of the application, but that's sort of a different... let's not go into that at the moment, right? Let's just stick with the base license. Then you have different roles. So you as a person have a role in the company, and that gets assigned to you, which gives you certain access into the application, right? And you can define against a role how a user can, or how the role can interact with Dynamics, right? So if you want to be able to create accounts, you set it up that way. If you only want to read accounts, you set it up that way. If you want both, you can also set it up that way. But it also gets more granular than that, where you can define it at what level you want to be able to access that information, right? So you've got like organization level, you've got a business unit level. So business unit might be like particular divisions of your company. Then you've got like parent-child business units, right? So if you have a subsidiary, which then is branched into separate subsidiaries, you can also split it that way as well. And then you can even go down to the user level, right? So that you only can see what you create, right? So maybe you don't have visibility on the system at all, but you have access to the records that you're the owner of.
Right. So what you're talking about here then is more specifically within your organization. This is how to set up every individual user to the grand scale of how.
I wouldn't say user, because you wouldn't define permission per user. You would define it by role or team.
By role. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're a sales team member, right, you might be a salesperson. There might be 5-6 salespersons that work in your organization, right? And then you're assigning that role to that person, right? But then you might have a sales manager who manages all those people, who has higher access and needs to have more visibility because they're responsible for different business units, right? So then they can see the whole business unit, but you only can see your business unit. So you might work with your colleague on a particular area, right? You could even split it like as a business unit, could be a state, right? You're responsible for New South Wales, right? You only have visibility of New South Wales, but then, your colleague is responsible for Victoria, but then the manager manages both of you, so he needs to see both of those, right?
I see. So I guess I have one more question on security, which is separately related, but this has given me an interesting question around, well, more just a statement around what I've observed with some of the consulting work that we've done and discovery work we've done with people. And it's become fairly apparent to most of us that the integration of this whole AI and Gen AI within a professional business operation, it's made us all aware of a lot of habits that we have about the way we operate our business and whether it's actually helpful or not. And so there's a certain sense of, behavioral change that really has to come with adopting something like AI and Copilot, and that's separate to even like, D365 CRM, right? The idea is we need to keep all of those things in good order and cleaned up so that we can adopt it, right? But from a psychological perspective, that requires a lot of behavior change. And when you have lots of people in a company, everybody has different habits. That some are more resistant and some are what we call early adopters and willing to change. It's really raised a lot of things around that, hasn't it? Like, what have you observed in that space?
I feel like there's different levels, right? You've got people who've been working in the workforce for many, many years, right? Let's say that you're close to retirement age. You probably went through the change of the computers first coming into the workforce, right? Going from manual to using computer, using a Word document, etc., right? And maybe you guys were the pioneers at the time. Now the next generation now with AI is come in, and people are still stuck in their very old ways where you're reading every single email you receive. You have all of these, I won't call them bad habits because it's not necessarily bad habits. It's just how you worked, right? But not quite as adopting to the change to use AI to assist you. And look, I'm not saying that I'm not putting everyone in the same bucket, right? Everyone has different levels, and some people are still, even if I talk personally, my grandfather who's 80 plus years, he's still using a laptop and he's still learning how to use video calls and whatever, right? So he's very adaptive to all this new technology and he's willing to learn it, right? And I think that there's that willingness. I've been doing this for so many years. I don't want to change it because it works.
Right.
Yeah. Rather than going, you know what, I'm going to try something out and see if it actually can help me or boost my productivity, or I can get more benefits out of it, right? If I could spend more time doing X job versus Y job, then I could actually probably get a lot more done.
Yeah, and I think on that, what we're seeing is that we're in a bit of an innovative change stage, right, as a society around all this, and maybe over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see things. It's almost like things get a little bit. You have to shake something up or rupture something before you can strengthen it, just like your muscles, right? You go to the gym, you put a bit of stress on it, and then you give it good nutrition. So what we're doing is we're going.
Say you're sore for like a week or two. No.
Yeah, but
then it gets easier.
Right. So it does get easier because the foundations are there, and then everything from there becomes building blocks. But the initial phase, it's about bringing everyone to the table and saying, "Hey guys, like, how do we actually work as a business? Like, are we like?" There's all these technologies and things there like AI and Gen AI that are really fast tracking things, and everyone else is getting on board. So if we don't do it, we are going to be left behind. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Yes.
So you have to have that conversation internally with your team. Predominantly, it's the leadership team to then lead the team beyond that. Depending on the size of your organization, it might be a little bit easier or a bit more challenging. But there's a lot of things around that behavioral change thing that we need to work through first before we can even start to adopt those things.
Yeah.
So I have some more questions on that, but I want to come back to the security, the other side of the security. So we talked a little bit about the internal security of, different role-based access.
Yep.
What about like my data and the company's sensitive data? Like, how does something like Copilot, if I want to adopt it within my business, how does that, how can I be sure that our sensitive data is safe?
On the dynamic side, your environment is hosted on the cloud by Microsoft. So all of that, I won't say responsibility, but that is all safeguarded by Microsoft, right? Microsoft ensure that your information is protected and no one gets access to it. If there is a vulnerability that they find, they patch it up and they push it out as soon as possible, right?
Can I clarify that is Azure Cloud and that stays within Australia? Or is that different? Maybe Azure is different? Like, there's all these questions that seem to come up that with
is
people.
Is it Azure Cloud? Probably is because it's Microsoft, but I can't say 100% certain, hand on heart, right? What the foundations of it is.
Okay.
Right.
So to clarify then, let me ask that again.
Yeah.
When you say it goes onto the cloud within Microsoft, does that stay within Australia?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
When you purchase it, it'll tell you where it's hosted, and then it will try and host it in Australia. Yeah.
Cool.
Obviously, there's redundancies, so there's different data centers around the world and even in Australia. And if something goes wrong in one, you've got a redundancy so that you still have access to your CRM. It just doesn't go out just because the data center went out, right? For power outage or whatever reason, right?
What do you mean by redundancy?
Redundancy meaning that you have backups, right? So similar to what you got here. Redundancy.
Hey, don't be giving away all my secrecies. My podcast recording secrets.
So like if you had two data centers, right? One got attacked or the internet died on it, right? If you only had one, you wouldn't have access to your CRM at all if it was hosted in that data center. So the redundancy is that if that, for whatever reason, that went down, they make copies of your data and across the data centers to make sure that you have full availability of everything.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But that's kind of done behind the scenes. You don't have visibility of that.
Right. Yeah. But that's okay because,
Yeah.
as a business owner and operator or whatever, I don't have to worry about that,
Yes,
right?
correct.
I want Microsoft to worry about that, and
Yeah,
I want to pay
that's
my
fine.
licensing
Yeah,
fees. So
exactly right. That's what your
fine.
license covers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's understand a little bit more about Copilot then, and maybe the security measures around that. And then I'd like to segue into a bit more around the adoption of Copilot on the M365 stack and how that kind of works.
In terms of Microsoft M365 Copilot,
Yep.
you've got two different modes that you can operate in. You've got work mode and you've got web. Work mode puts a bubble around your work data and tends to focus Copilot to search your work data so that anything that you're referencing, if you're referencing confidential information, that stays within your bubble. And if it's unable to find that information, it will search the web, but it won't expose it to the web, right? It tries to
Right.
keep everything inside the bubble.
Right.
With the web toggle, it gives you full access to the web, but it does not use your work data at all when you're doing a search. So if you're prompting in regards to, maybe you're looking at the latest sales trends on a particular product, that will just purely search the web rather than using your work data if you have sales trends on that particular product, right? Maybe you're trying to tailor marketing information towards it, right? So you know how to reach your audience. What was the second part of the question?
Second part of the question was, I guess, when it comes to adopting something like Copilot, okay, great. So there's a bit of security measures around. We've got the work and web toggle. So,
Yep.
Literally to put it a little bit more simply for people listening, on every aspect, on every platform of Microsoft, whether you're looking in Outlook or in SharePoint or wherever it is, you're going to have your little Copilot button. It's going to have an option to go, yep, I'm on the web or I'm on work. And
Yes.
it's literally a toggle at the top of the screen.
Not in every app, only when you're using the business chat feature,
Right.
which is on the web. I forgot the URL from the top of my head, but you've got that, and then you've got Teams. Teams has in chat, you've got the Copilot as one of the people in chat, which then also has that toggle. The only other place it's available is in Edge, when at the top right of your screen you've got the Copilot icon, and if you've got a M365 Copilot license, then you'll see the work versus web.
Right.
Right.
So,
And I think that's also for all of them, right? Not just that one, right? But you do have access to Copilot chat, but most of it's just the standard version, which is just your web.
right. So this is a good point to make, though, because a lot of people I talk with seem to say, yeah, I've got Copilot, because they can see the little thing in their Edge, right? But when they click on it, they're not going to see work web toggle, which is a pretty key indication that you don't have a license activated for
Correct.
it. So that's one little thing that if someone's listening and they're wondering if they already have it or not, check that maybe before even maybe asking people in your organization if you actually have the license.
Yep.
I know a lot of companies, especially within, say, the government or something, have said, yeah, it's available, but you have to ask for it, and then people have to proactively go and ask for it, and then there's no training around it, and there's all these, it's a bit of a teething process, right?
Yes.
So, which is why I wanted to ask you about the adoptability, and the capability training around that. So that's something that we work with clients on to make sure we're training them to use it as best possible. And part of that comes back to the idea of making sure your D365 is all set up and operating effectively, make sure your staff are following the right policies and processes so that stuff is saved in the right spot, et cetera, right?
Yeah, not just D365, but also SharePoint. I think SharePoint's a key part of Copilot, right? If you have all your documentation and that all in a central location, you have quick access to it, and Copilot has access to it, right? I think that needs to be in some sort of order, right? Because it can help you find documents, but if everything's all over the place and there's duplicates and all over the place, or people are storing stuff in their personal OneDrives which you don't have access to, then it's not going to seem very effective because you can't find anything, and then you realize, it's because this person actually shared it with me and it's in their OneDrive, right? So having everything central, I think that's also key, right? Not just on your desktop,
Yeah.
or on your personal OneDrive.
Yeah, and that again comes back to behaviors, right? And following processes. So I guess I'm curious what you think the top 2 or maybe 3 aspects are for a company or a business that is thinking of bringing on something like, let's integrate and clean things up in, having everything in the one place within our SharePoint and D365 because we're getting ready to adopt Copilot and we want to really innovate our ways of working. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you think that someone might want to consider or do in the process of adoption?
Considerations, I would say, first one is centralizing that document management and your SharePoint, rationalize it. Second one is security. A lot of organizations are still using old security permissions on folders and files, so as I was sort of mentioning before, you've got Copilot has access to anything that you have access to, right? But if you don't have access to a particular file, and you should, then you have to request it. So I think having a rationalization of security using Purview, which does some classifications of files, which then you can grant access to, and it also allows you to make your SharePoint a little bit more of a flat structure rather than having it very deep that, this person has access to the 10 subfolders within subfolders, right?
Right.
So I think security is definitely a key consideration as well. Is there a third? I think the third would be, it's not really a consideration, but I think when you're looking to do Copilot, identify your early adopters, the people who are going to be advocates for it and get the most out of it. People who are more maybe got an innovative or keen to learn, keen to try attitude, they'll make the most of it, and then they can become the advocates for the company or the team to try and onboard everyone, because you're going to have people who are more interested and less interested, or people who are stuck in their ways and they don't want to change, right?
Well, what makes you think that that's important to have someone who's an early adopter and a leader in this space?
I think that if you have someone who is very resistant to change, they might not utilize it the most effective way, right? Even if you give them the training, they're quite, I don't want to say people have different learning speeds and people could be slower. That's natural. Everyone learns at different paces. But they might get really frustrated with it because they feel like maybe initially it's taking them longer because they're learning how to use the product, right? Or how to utilize Copilot. And then that might give the negative connotation to the rest of the team, or they might give negative feedback. Oh, this is rubbish and it's no use, get rid of it. No, and then that might spread around the company, not as a rumor, but, it might just give the wrong impression of the product, right? Whereas if you have someone who's quite intelligent or very keen to learn and they're willing to try things, they might actually discover where it can save them a lot of time, and they're like, oh, look, I did this. Look how much time it's saved me today, right? I know that we've been in a few sessions with clients, right? And we saw some very innovative ways where people were using Copilot to, do things, even just like doing their quarterly
reviews.
Reviews,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Yes. I was like, what's the word? There's a word there, right?
Yeah.
Their quarterly reviews. And it's something that I wouldn't have even thought of. And, even today, right, one of our colleagues who just started using Copilot themselves thought of a way to summarize different documents together and get the outcome that we wanted. And something I didn't even consider, right? And I've been using it for quite a while now. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's actually quite an interesting way. And we got the common themes through the documents, right?
Yeah, look, I found it very fun in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and I do like to say that I'm an early adopter, Armaan. And I like to be forward thinking and about creation, and I can see how tricky that can be for some people, and getting through that behavioral change and the teething process of it, because there's all these stats that say, oh, you can save 2 hours a day or whatever it is if you're effectively using Copilot. I mean, it's obviously relevant to what type of work you're doing and everything.
Yep.
But it's probably you have to work towards that. It's not going to like, if you just buy it and then turn it on, it's just not going to save you that straight away, right? You have to
Developing a
train
skill.
yourself. Yeah.
It's
And
not,
so we're
it's
learning
not quite
it.
like you're learning how to use an application, right? It becomes a skill over time, right? You would have picked up Word at some point, right? If it was when we were in school, when we would have used it through high school and even primary school, right? And we would have used it and sort of understood how to do titles and, maybe nowadays there's word art, right? Where you'd put your rainbow title page.
Yeah.
Right. But then over time it's developed and you've learned how to develop it into a skill where you write formal documents and stuff, right? Same as Copilot, right? You have to learn how to develop that skill to talk to it to get the best out of it, right? And that's kind of like part of what we do with our onboarding of Copilot to our clients, right? Where we teach them how to prompt and how to make the most out of Copilot and show them the difference between something very basic in terms of a prompt to something that's quite detailed and how that response differs.
Yeah, and you can, over time, as you keep trying it every day, you'll get familiar with what comes back when you give it X data, right? And then how that gets better over time, or how it gets a bit off track. And then eventually for your kind of repeatable tasks that you need, you can figure out the best prompts for those things. And then every day you might have different nuances and newer things that come
100%,
up.
but
right?
I think also you will identify that maybe you were a bit unclear when you were talking to it, right? You might say, summarize this page, right? But then you actually wanted to summarize a particular section on the page, right? And you weren't very clear because maybe it wasn't something you thought about. But when you read it, its response was like, oh, but I didn't care about that. Oh, because I didn't say this.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's certainly a lot to it, and I guess this is a great way for us to wrap up our conversation today. I think that there's many things to consider when it comes to looking at D365 CRM in particular as one topic, and then the integration of something like Copilot that's going to basically complement that. So there's definitely a lot to consider, and I think one thing I'd like to leave our listeners on is, one thing that we do at Solentive, I work there together, is that we're...
Really?
Well, I haven't quite said that to our listeners just yet. So one of the things that we do, which we offer, is a kind of like an assessment phase and a discovery phase of, when a new business is ready to adopt something like, Copilot or AI in any way, shape or form, or something like D365 as well, if they're not already on that. What we want to do is just kind of sit there and have a bit of a strategy session on both the tech side and the business side, because as a strategy first consultancy, we want to make sure that your IT and tech side of things are aligning with your actual business objectives and making sure that you've got the right products and the right training and support around that. So we do AI assessments and data assessments. So they're sort of two different things, but basically they're a comprehensive deep dive across two different sessions, a technical session and a business session, where we can really understand all those things, suggest the right products that might be good for you, and then how we're going to integrate that and support you, including some capability training around something like Microsoft Copilot.
Yep.
So very exciting stuff. If people are listening and they want to go and get in contact with us, they can go to our website, which is solentive.com. I'll put it in the show notes. All right. Well, look, thanks, Armaan. Thanks so much for today. I appreciate all your insights, and I'm sure there's, so much more to be said on that. But it's a great way to start the conversation and start the pilot episode of our podcast.
Excellent.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.